All right, guys, I've already made statements about this on streams, on Discord, on other media. I've completely forgotten to make videos about this, and not because there's necessarily like a reason for me to do that. Like, I just haven't had time. I just kind of forgot. It just kind of slipped my mind that I hadn't really addressed this situation yet. But it does need to be addressed. It does need to be talked about. It does need to be discussed. Splatoon 3 side order is one of the worst things Nintendo has ever done. Right? Full stop. Like, I couldn't even play this for more than an hour, right? Roguelites are like one of the worst genres ever conceived by game developers because it's just a bunch of lazy, rehashed, like reutilized assets slapped together randomly. There's no artistry to it. There's no real flavor. Like, it's just make everything random, and then like experienced players will struggle a little bit because things don't work out the way that they necessarily expect, right? Yeah, change your power up layout so it's not possible to win every time, right? That's kind of their design philosophy, and it really does not work. Like, I don't appreciate roguelikes, I don't respect them. I think they are the absolute worst. And a Splatoon 3 is no exception to that, right? Side Order does not really do a lot to innovate on the roguelike genre. Like, the most important thing I think is that this is a big budget release and not an indie game. Like, it's fully 3D, you have a wide range of weapons, you can do all this neat stuff with your stacking, right? You can get unlock new powers, like Pearl is following you around in her little robot, and like you can get her to upgrade her. Like, you have a hacking system, but like the long and short of it is, like, I don't want to play the game over and over again, getting slowly better, when in reality, like, it is just a completely unnecessary step, right? Like, all of the stuff you're doing in side order could easily be done with like a typical like RPG building mechanic, right? Like, if side order had like an actual structure to it, if it was like, okay, you can customize your character and you have to go through all these floors. Like, that would have been way better than what they came up with. But instead, it's just this like randomly generated thing. It's uninspired, it's boring. The enemy designs are cool, but that's about it, right? But yeah, like, roguelites are the worst thing ever, right? Nintendo did not innovate here. They did not deliver anything fresh, new, or exciting. Like, Side Order was a massive disappointment. And I think most people agree it's a disappointment. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, but everything I've seen has been relatively very negative. And unlike most of the discourse surrounding Splatoon 3, I still very much enjoy like the core gameplay modes. I like the single player. I love the single player. I love Salmon Run. I love like the base game. Like, as much as I love like the base game of Splatoon 3, there is no denying that Splatoon Side Order was a huge disappointment. And I think one of the big things that really destroyed it for me personally was like the sheer mishandling of Off the Hook, right? The sheer mishandling of these Splatoon 2 characters, because we all know who Off the Hook are. We all know like the character dynamics. We all know what they're like. We know about like Marina being an Octoling and like leaving the underground to go to the surface. Like, Side Order, right, seem to want to try and establish more Marina stuff, right? You learn a little bit more about her background. You learn about her like childhood best friend Oct. You were like supposed to do some more. We were supposed to see some more of that, right? But what we got was like just everyone sitting in an elevator just going like, that was awkward, over and over and over again. Like, there's no personality, there's no charm, there's no charisma. Like, it just seems really, really, really lazy and uninspired, right? They do nothing with building up Off the Hook as characters, right? If anything, I've always maintained that Marina has been my least favorite idol, like ever since she was first unveiled, because the character really does feel as if she's just not all that well thought out in this sense. Where like you have this character with this like really really complex backstory where like, okay, she saw the Squid Sisters when she was in the underground. It inspired her to come to the surface, and that led to her like joining off the hook and becoming like a famous idol on the surface. Okay, whatever. Okay, whatever. You can do a lot with that, right? But then like we kind of get like more from her. We kind of get some more of her personality. We get some more like, and every time you do, you get this sense that like the writers don't know how it makes her look, right? Because like, what's the plot of Side Order, right? Marina gets like, she creates some kind of like AI supercomputer thing, and like it tries taking over or something. I don't know what the plot is because they do a very bad job explaining it. But like, Marina just basically just gets hijacked by some AI she built or something. Okay, so Pearl goes to save her, right? And so like, Agent 8 is there as well for some reason. And you also have like Oct who's there. And like you go and save Marina like through a tutorial segment, and then you're just like, okay, now like we have to go like beat the tower and like just completely shut this thing down, right? And there is no like there is no focus on the characters or like lingering feelings or like anything that makes it interesting. Because like, why is Oct even there? Because like the thing about Oct that confuses me about her, right, is that she's like, okay, she's like friends with Marina, right? They grew up together. They were like doing Octarian things together. They were evil like mechanics or some shit. Like they were like just best friends, right? So like Marina just abandons Oct and goes to the surface. Like really? Like the way that looks, the way it makes Marina look, the way she like treats Pearl, the way she like speaks to Oct, it's like she abandoned her old best friend and replaced her with a new model, right? It makes Marina look like a bitch. Like, and conversely, I actually really like Pearl. Like, I've always said this. Like, Pearl has always been like the selling point of off the hook for me. She's funny. She has like a great like background. Like, I love the whole like speakers thing. How she like blew them out when she tried to sing. Like, when I look at like Pearl, like Mar- Marina seems like the kind of person who would like abandon her friends if it would benefit her personally, right? Like we keep seeing this all the time. Where like in Splatoon 2 early on, like what was the dynamic? Like she was trying to do the Marie thing of like being really really mean to Pearl, right? And it made her look really really bad, right? And so like they tried to retcon it and like, oh, I was just nervous under a camera, but like just the way she like badly the way she used to talk about Pearl is still like weighs heavily on my mind. Like she's shit talking her all the time, saying all this crazy nonsense, and Pearl just takes it in stride because like she's too stupid to understand when she's being insulted, right? But like it just doesn't work. It makes her look terrible. And by Octopath expansion, they become like closer friends, but at the same time, it's like, well, hmm, like does this really work? It just seems kind of forced, right? Like honestly, like my thing about Off the Hook when I was first introduced to them was that like I honestly thought that like behind the scenes there was like some friction. Like I thought that was like the angle they were going for was that like yeah, they're supposed to be best friends on camera, but off camera they hate each other's guts. And that's not what they were going for in the end, but at the same time, it's like, well, why did I get that impression, right? And again, like this is the issue with the off the hook, with off the hook. This is the issue with like Splatoon in general, where like the story elements are so disjointed and have taken so long to be told that I honestly cannot stay invested. Nobody can. Because like nobody read the Splatoon 2 lore books and learned about Oct and learned about like those the underground and how like society like nobody cares. Like there's a handful of things that kind of catch on that become popular, but like typically you get like a build up in the story mode and then a payoff in the DLC, right? That's what happened in Splatoon 2, right? Where we got the speaker thing, right? Where like Pearl used like the Pearl like blew out the speakers with her voice. And then when she whips out the killer whale in Octopath, it's like one of the most it's one of the most, like, did I call it Octopath? Octopass, right? When Pearl whips out the killer whale in the DLC, like you're just immediately just like, oh man, like Pearl's gonna win it for the team, like, and she just like destroys a giant robot with her voice. Like it's that scene, it's like that scene in like Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny, where like Jack Black blows a dude's out with his voice. Like Pearl does that to a giant robot, and it's like legit one of like the most kino Nintendo experiences we've gotten in the past decade. You know, Splatoon 2 had an amazing DLC, an amazing one, one of the best third-person shooter campaigns ever, in my opinion. And the fact that like Side Order couldn't even like rekindle like a fraction of that is just embarrassing. You know, like as it stands now, like I think Splatoon 2 has proven itself to be better than Splatoon 3 because at the very least it had a good expansion, you know, like Splatoon 3 in a lot of ways, like, yeah, I think we should have waited another couple of years. You know, like I don't necessarily see why Splatoon 3 had to come out now. Now, I do think 3 is a solid release base game. I do think the changes that were warranted. I put tons of time into it. Like I'm not like regretting my purchase or anything, but like I really do have to like question the idea of releasing a new video game, like hyping up a DLC and then having the DLC just be that underwhelming. Because one of the things about Splatoon 3 I was saying about like from the very beginning was this like, oh yeah, the DLC could add a lot to this, right? You know, you have all of like the refinements in the base game and like the DLC, if like they could really add like new modes and new features and stuff like that. But they didn't do that. Like they put out Side Order instead, one of like the cringiest, most like unfun, just it's terrible, right? It's gotten to the point where like you know, I do think Splatoon is going to be one of those Nintendo IPs that I'm going to like be considering not supporting in the future because that this is one of those cases where I'm just kind of like I am so unimpressed with this Nintendo release that I honestly don't have any faith in subsequent releases right now. Right? You know, Splatoon 3 is technically still going. It's still being updated, and yet like Side Order was so disappointing that I honestly don't even care anymore. Right? It really is that bad. You know, and I don't see a lot of other people addressing this because I think a lot of other people were like not really on board with the Splatoon thing in general, but like, yeah, like I think Side Order specifically has like caused me to kind of flip and kind of like just kind of uh, outright want to condemn this IP and what the developers are doing. Like, this is straight up unacceptable. Like, you have to add new things into a video game. You can't just coast by on past successes forever. And it feels like the Splatoon developers don't seem to understand how to do that.